Want to know what the movers and shakers of New Hampshire's performing arts are thinking? Welcome to New Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
This is Ray Dudley, Artistic Director for Square Peg Productions. And look who dropped by today, the lovely Katie Collins. Katie is the Director of Development at the Capitol Center for the Arts. Today, she drops a secret about an upcoming project. And then we get into the meat of things at the Capitol Center for the Arts, where she talks about how the Capitol Center gets its funding and how it gives back to the community. We get a little into the weeds as we talk about demographics, grant writing, how venues like Tupelo and Meadowbrook affect which acts may or may not even be able to appear at the CCA stage. And then she talks about why she loves to have the NHTAs hosted at the Capitol Center for the Arts. And then it's all about her, how she got into acting, future projects she would love to do, like a female version of Glengarry Glen Ross, and things on her bucket list. And all in all, this is just a very interesting inside look at the Capitol Center for the Arts and Katie Collins. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning, Ray.
How's things?
They're good.
Yeah? Busy?
Yeah, they're very busy.
In what way?
Well, as you may or may not know, I'm the Director of Development at the Capitol Center for the Arts, and we are in what we're calling the spring sprint of our Capitol campaign, getting ready to open our second performance venue. So things are very exciting and very busy.
Wait a minute. What did you mean? Hold it. Your second performance venue.
Yes.
Okay, we're jumping deep in the weeds here already, but what does that mean?
Well, the Capitol Center has taken ownership of the old Concord movie theater, which if you grew up in Concord and went to the movies in Concord, I'm sure you have a story about going to the movies there. It's been vacant since 1994. And with the help of local developer Steve Dupree, we were able to take ownership of it almost a year ago, July of 2018.
Where is it located?
It is located on Main Street. It's 900 feet from the current Capitol Center for the Arts building. It's next to Endicott Furniture, in between Endicott Furniture and the Co-op.
Yeah.
You'll know it if you've ever looked down at the sidewalk while you're walking past it, because there's a mosaic that says Concord Theater laid into the sidewalk right in front of its entrance. Now that entrance is all barricaded by construction gates. So that is going to be open this summer.
Okay. So now that we've jumped deep, let's back up a little.
Okay.
And tell me one more time about your title.
Sure.
And what does that job do?
Great.
In
So I've been Director of Development at the Capitol Center since 2005. So I'm in my 14th season. And development is just a fancy word for fundraising. You'll notice nobody calls it fundraising. Colleges call it advancement. Nonprofits call it development. But it's fundraising is what it is. So I'm responsible for raising the contributed income for the Capitol Center every year. I work with two other people in my department, and we raise over $600,000 every year in contributed income for the operating expenses of the CCA. And now this campaign sits on top of that.
So let's get into those numbers a little bit. For some unknown reason, I thought that the Capitol Center was almost self-funding ticket sales,
yeah,
right? I mean, I'm
right.
ignorant about how all that goes.
Sure.
So what's the difference between what's coming in? You have to give me the actual numbers, but what's the difference between what comes in and the shortfall that forces you to have to go fundraise?
So we're a nonprofit. A lot of people think we must sell out every show, which is completely not true. We have a 1,300-seat theater. It's very hard to sell 1,300 seats. If you've come to the theater on a night when maybe we've sold 700 or 800 seats, the theater feels very full. But you're not turning around and looking up into the balcony and seeing empty seats or in the back of the theater. So truly selling out is really an achievement. We're what's called a roadhouse, so we don't produce our own shows. We bring in tours, and we bring in tours that are only here for one night. So they come in, they load in, they do the show, they load out, and they're gone. So our turnaround is very fast, and our profit margin is very, very thin. We always talk about our hoping to make our nut on a show, which could be anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000. If we make more than that, that's terrific. Every show.
That would be your break-even point, kind of?
Sure, yeah, or, turning a profit. But, we have to pay crew, we have to pay staff, we have to run the building, we have to keep lights on, heats on, all of that stuff. Snow removal, you name it. And every show has a different contract. So every show, the profit margins are structured slightly differently. It's very rare that shows have a clean, even contract. For example, music stars, singers, bands are not making money on record sales anymore. They're making their money on the road.
Right.
And they've realized they can start to charge a premium for things like VIP packages and meet and greets. And all of that extra money above and beyond the base price of the seat, the artist keeps. So sometimes we have a very thin margin of profit. We do a lot of what we call co-promoted shows, where we work with promoters who will go to agents, whether it's a singer or a Broadway show, and say, we'll buy a certain number of dates from you, and we'll place these dates in theaters around the country, because the agents don't necessarily want to bargain with every different venue. So those co-promoters help us with access to acts. Sometimes we don't have the power to get on our own, but we share the risk with them, but we also share the profit with them. So there's always a little bit of a gap. We make a good chunk of money off our stage, but we don't make enough. So that's where my department comes in. We fill that gap of what the ongoing needs of the theater are.
Are there some types of shows which are more popular than others, which bring in... Okay, I'm setting this up because I have gone by that theater in the summer when there's dance competitions.
Right.
You can't find a parking spot within 4 miles of that place.
Right. So that's another avenue of income we have, which is rental income. So those dance competitions or dance recitals, they've just rented the theater, similar to what the New Hampshire Theater Awards does. They rent the theater to put on their show. So we don't necessarily make money beyond the rental and, ticket fees and concessions and things like that. Music is very popular. I've long since given up trying to predict what is going to sell out. The most insane ticket on sale I've ever experienced, because my department will help the box office sell tickets on very busy ticket selling days, because we can all do it from our computers. We brought the children's singer Raffi last year. It was a rental. They rented the theater. We put that show on sale. It sold out, I think, in an hour. They added a second show, and that sold out.
It sold out within an hour?
Right. So this is a children's entertainer who was really big in the 80s. But now the kids who grew up listening to him now have kids of their own. So that was a really fast sellout. We've done really well with country music. Does very well in the theater. But sort of classic rock. We bring a show every year called Get the Lead Out, which is a Led Zeppelin tribute, and almost always sells out. You would think our Broadway shows would sell out, and they don't.
No kidding.
They don't. Unless it's a really well-known title where people know they already know the music. Mamma Mia, that will sell out.
Yeah.
Ragtime, 600 people.
No kidding.
Yeah, which breaks my heart.
I would not have thought of
Breaks my heart. So, we bring some amazing Broadway tours through. This year we've got $1 Million Quartet coming still, and we have Finding Neverland coming. And those are 2 amazing shows. Wow. So I hope we'll have good houses.
Your position as executive...
Director of Development.
Director of Development. Is that stressful? What give me a snapshot of a day in the life of Katie Collins there.
It's funny. A lot of my job is just talking to people. And I like to talk to people, so I don't find that stressful. Conversations about philanthropy and money, I think, are stressful to people who've not done it. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking to somebody who supports the organization, whether it's a business or a person, it's always a really good conversation to have. And then you just get around to asking them to make a gift to you at the end of it. And usually it goes very well. I closed a really lovely $50,000 gift the other day to the campaign that was just delightful. The whole process about it was delightful. But there are days when you think you're getting a grant and you don't, or your sponsor that you've had for years suddenly gets bought by another company and they don't know who you are and they don't want to sponsor you anymore. And so it can be stressful, yes.
Do you write your own grants?
I do.
For the sake of anybody that listens, can you tell us the difference between a sponsorship and a grant? And if there's any other kind of...
Yeah, our contributed income really comes from primarily individuals. That's the biggest driver of giving to the Capital Center.
Individual people.
And then the corporate sponsorships. So a business will make a gift of anywhere from $500 to $20,000 in a season. And with that gift comes the ability to sponsor a show or a series or something like our e-newsletter, or they can put their logo on the backs of the tickets. I mean, we get very creative. And then grants tend to be purely for operating support. And those are harder to get. But the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, the State Council for the Arts, the Byrne Foundation, there's others theaters have been very generous to us. So I do write. I'm writing 2 of them right now. So
it's a lot of work, right? I mean, to write a grant.
It is. I like writing though, so it's okay.
And they're fixed pots. It's not like
Correct. Right.
What's the largest amount you've ever been able to acquire from a sponsor or a grant?
We have a naming sponsor for the new theater who has made a significant gift to put their name on the theater, which will now be known as the Bank of New Hampshire Stage.
Oh, wonderful.
So we're very grateful to Bank of New Hampshire for that investment. And then on an individual level, I've had people give significant 6-figure gifts and make enough of them that their lifetime giving is over 7 figures to the theater. So we have some very generous people in this.
Are there a lot of them recurring year after year, or do you have to redo it all?
Well, you usually, yes.
Ouch.
But it's okay. There's some of my favorite people to talk to. So
I'm guessing that most of the money predominantly comes in from local sources.
Correct.
Do you get outside sources? Are there federal monies allowed? Or
we could. The National Endowment for the Arts has not made significant investments in our types of organization because we're a presenting house, because we don't produce our own work. It's a little bit harder to get some of those grants. Their grants, which are wonderful, tend to go more for people that are writing new work or creating new companies or installing new art and things like that. But we could. And I'm working right now on a grant to a foundation out of New York, which has funded us before, and I'm hopeful will fund us again. So there are outside sources, but it's really primarily New Hampshire driven.
How many shows a year?
Oh, at the Capitol Center?
Yeah, any clue? I mean, you must have.
Yeah. We're busy, with something in there, whether it's an event or a show. Sometimes I think close to 200 nights a year. But I think we bring 80 shows a year in what we book and what we put in there.
That's a healthy number of things moving in and out.
Yeah.
But you think you have the capacity, if you wanted to put in more?
Yeah, part of the strategy behind the new theater is that some of our programming will move to this smaller venue, and that opens up dates on the calendar for the bigger shows. Our inventory is our calendar. We have so many dates that we can sell. So having 2 theaters gives us more to work with.
What's the size of the smaller one?
It's going to have a flexible seating configuration. So when the seats are extended, we can handle seating for 280. And then when the seats are retracted to a flat floor, we can do standing room shows for 450.
This is the new one, and that's going to be, okay. Do you not have 2 theaters in the building now?
We really don't. We have the Chubb Theater, and we have what we call our Spotlight Cafe, which we set up in our Governor's Hall, which is the big lobby space, when you've gone to a show there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right. So we call that our second venue, but those shows will all be the kind of shows that are moving to the new theater.
The overhead there must be crazy.
It's not cheap.
Yeah, I can imagine. How many people are there, employees?
And staff, 19.
Yeah, 19. All full-time?
No. No, we're pretty lean. Yeah.
Volunteers?
I think we have over 200 volunteers.
200?
Yeah. Those are, anytime you've come to a show and you've seen our ushers in their bow ties, and they're all volunteers.
They get to see the show.
Well, they can see the show, when they're volunteering.
That helps out. Are there shows which you will not bring in? You seem to have a very eclectic schedule.
Yes.
Are there some which you're like, that won't go very well here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the programmer. We do have an amazing programming manager who is just dynamite. And so we have a pretty good sense of what will sell or will not sell. There are programs that will show you tickets sold in similarly sized theaters in similar markets, so you get a sense of what your risk is going to be. Sometimes we can tell if it's a similar type of show. We've done well with sort of the Peter, Paul and Mary, Chris Christopherson, Arlo Guthrie, that kind of genre. Yep. So sometimes you can kind of say, well, this is sort of that genre that tends to do well. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah, it's a real coin toss,
had
isn't it?
Shows which I could have sworn to you would be really gangbusters and didn't do well, and vice versa.
Do you do a lot of dinners and luncheons? And I seem to have this idea.
In my job?
Yes.
I do.
I seem to think that's kind of
I do a lot of coffee, actually. Coffee is kind of like become the go-to because it's not as much time invested as a dinner or a lunch. But yeah, I do a fair number of lunches, less dinners.
Yeah.
I sit in a good amount of living rooms and boardrooms. And so
are a lot of your meetings one-on-ones, or do you ever address a group and say,
Sometimes we've had great success going into offices and making presentations about the new theater to a group of employees over lunch. We've done that with a lot of law firms and other companies, and that's gone really well. When you do a corporate visit, there tend to be more people in the room because they're more decision makers. When I'm talking to just an individual donor or two donors, it's usually me and one of my board members and then the donors.
Do you have to massage the conversation? Do you have to educate the donor about tax breaks? Or
not usually. People, they're pretty savvy. Donors in New Hampshire are pretty savvy. By the time you get to the point that you're sitting down in someone's living room or sitting across the table from them in True Brew to ask them for money, they know why they're there. The real work actually goes in getting them to that point.
Oh.
So we do a lot of what we call cultivation. A lot of cultivation.
Expand on that. What I get what it means.
Yeah. So inviting people to, oftentimes when we have shows, we'll do a pre-show reception where we'll invite people to come for, hors d'oeuvres and wine, and we'll usually talk about the new theater and how it's coming. And people will sometimes start to self-identify by how many questions they ask, how engaged they seem around it. And so we sort of know people that we want to get closer to us, or people who've been donors to us for a while, and now we want to try to move them to maybe becoming a campaign donor. So it's all about getting them comfortable with the campaign and finding out their sense of belief in the campaign or investment in the campaign and the new theater. And then, so by the time you're sitting down with somebody, they know why you're sitting down with them, and it goes pretty smoothly.
So I'm guessing you don't get many rejections after you've gotten to that point.
After that point, no. The rejections...
The close rate must be pretty good.
It's pretty good, yeah. The rejections tend to come when you're asking for that appointment. Then that's when they'll say, you don't need to come see us. We're not going to invest in this. And that happens. You just can't take it personally.
It's business.
Right.
Your donor base, not the individuals, but businesses.
Sure.
Are they a lot of small businesses, or do you have like a smaller number of large businesses which give?
There are a lot of kind of mid-size kind of law firm, accounting firm type of businesses. Most of the larger banks invest in us, larger insurance companies like Lincoln Financial. But the corporate landscape has really changed in New Hampshire. I've been doing this work for 30 years, and when... Fundraising, nonprofit fundraising work. And when I started, there was the sheer number of major banks headquartered in the state was staggering. And now we still have these big banks, but they're not headquartered here. You may be asking for money, and this decision is you're talking to the New Hampshire person who then has to go to somebody in New Jersey to get approval, or Hartford or what have you. So the landscape of corporate giving has really changed. But those sort of stalwart New Hampshire companies, primarily law firms or medical practices or insurance or accounting, they've really stayed with us.
The evolution of this is an interesting arc, too, then, I would think. Because businesses move in and out, not only do the main headquarters move out, but you've constantly got a shifting...
Right. And if your person leaves... it's like starting all over again.
Oh, man.
Because a lot of the work I do with our business sponsors, it's almost shorthand. We can accomplish it over a few emails. But if that person leaves and I have to start fresh with a new person, it's really like starting from scratch. I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of sort of my people tee it up with their successor before they've retired or moved to another position, and that's been helpful.
Because you have to build a whole new relationship.
Correct.
It's not just a matter of plug and play. Yep. So you have to massage that whole one-on-one type of thing.
My acting skills come in handy.
I want to get to those too in a little while. Does the Capital Center for the Arts find itself in competition for dollars from other groups?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all we're all looking for money. The pot is what it is.
Yeah.
There tend to be New Hampshire donors who will sort of be primarily arts donors or primarily environment donors or, social services. There are some people who say, my big thing right now is, I'm really invested in the new shelter in Concord, and that's where my money is going to go. And you have to respect that,
Absolutely.
Because philanthropy lifts all of our boats.
Right.
I think the nonprofit community in New Hampshire is really supportive and really collaborative. I talk all the time to my counterparts in different theaters. We talk about trends. We talk about volunteers. We, sometimes we'll just say, God, I haven't found this right tactic for membership, and what do you guys do? Because it really does help us all. A thriving arts community makes people want to invest more in the arts.
Do you find that Concord is a pretty artsy town?
It's much more. It's really become much more so. And I think the development of our end of Main Street has done so much for that. The Capitol Commons building, which houses Red River Theaters, the 2 buildings across the street from the theater, which now house the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen and Gibson's Bookstore. The music school is just thriving up the street. There's a lot happening. And it feels even more so than it did even 14, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think the demographics are changing, right? There's a whole generation, I think, of people who they want it to be kind of like Portsmouth. We're not on the coast, but they like that artsy kind of feel to it.
It doesn't feel quite as kind of hip as Portsmouth does, but there's something gentler and kinder about the community. Like Concord is a really friendly community to promote your work in. I think it's very supportive.
Does the Capitol Center, this may not be your purview either, but their outreach into the community, do they have any kind of programs where they help sponsor?
Sure. We don't necessarily sponsor things, but we do see ourselves very strongly as a community resource in a couple of different ways. One way is we have a program called Angel Tickets, which provides free tickets to many different service organizations in the area, the Friends Program or Riverbend or the Boys and Girls Club or
I didn't know that.
Lot of the organizations that work with our newly arrived residents from Somalia, Bhutan, and Sudan. We've started to work with them a little more closely. When we can't always because of the contracts, but when we know we can give out some of these tickets, we'll get vouchers to them for their people to come. So we try to eliminate barriers to access, whether it's economic or, cultural or transportation, just to open our doors as a welcoming place for people to experience live performance who might otherwise not be able to. We have a highly regarded school series. We bring over 10,000 kids in a year to see daytime, school-time programs.
10,000?
And that's from kindergarten through senior year in high school. And the shows are usually tied in some way to curriculum standards. So they'll have a literature bent or a history bent, sometimes a science bent, even a math bent, music. And we try to bring at least one Shakespeare every year for the older kids. Those are wonderful. I introduce those shows, and they're my favorites because the kids are they're so happy to be there. And we hear so often in our theater in the lobby on a show night, I came here as a kid. I came here with my school.
That's great news.
And now I'm back.
Oh, my God.
So we really see part of that process as creating kind of lifelong arts attenders as well.
Yeah, get them when they're young, right?
Right. And that's funded by Lincoln Financial for years now. They really invested in that.
I was going to ask
program.
you if that's subsidized by somebody.
Yeah. And they've even taken an extra step, as has St. Paul's School this past year, by making grants to us to assist schools for whom the cost of the bus and the driver is often a barrier to bringing the kids. So they can apply for reimbursement to cover the cost of the bus and the driver to get their kids there.
That's good to know, too. Yeah. Wow, that's a hidden gem.
It really is. Yeah. And they're great shows. They really are.
Yeah. So where do those entertainers come from?
Oh, they're all tourists. They're all, professional touring companies. They're all very young, these actors. When I'm backstage sometimes, I think, oh my gosh, they're just so young. But they're usually pretty fresh out of their college programs or starting their careers. And they're great.
Always eager, aren't they?
Yeah, and the shows are just great.
I know.
We've had some really inventive ones. We had one based on The Ugly Duckling that was all done in blacklight. They're just fascinating shows we've had. So.
My last run-in with blacklights might have been in the 70s. I might have been doing something a little different back then.
It was really interesting. I was backstage getting ready to introduce the show, and it was pitch black backstage. Everything was sealed up, so there was no light bleed for the show, which was all done in blacklight. And it was so dark that I didn't realize I was standing next to the actor playing a rabbit. And then he turned his costume on, and I must have jumped 6 feet in the air. Like, I literally had no idea who was next to me. So we've had some really fun shows in there, yeah.
Has the New Hampshire Theater Awards been a boon?
It's been great. Yeah. It's just been, for me personally, I love it because I sort of feel like it's both of my worlds coming together. My world as an actor
it's
and
Christmas
my world.
For you.
It really is. I feel sort of like a host welcoming all of my friends to my house in that night.
It's a
because
great
it's
way to put
really
it.
Wonderful to have the theatrical community and the people I've worked with and people I respect just, all there for this great party. It's a blast.
Draws a crowd. Does it fill it?
It doesn't fill it, but I think we're at the point of maybe thinking about opening the balcony, but it's between 800 and 900 Yeah,
all in one night. It's
really
such
great.
an event. I haven't been able to be there the last 2 years, but my wife and I just really love it. We love the entertainment. We don't, even the awards, we don't really care that much about. It's wonderful to see because a lot of times you're pulling in the cream of the crop, kind of, because these are the ones that are up for the awards, and they're doing their best numbers.
Right.
So you're getting, again, the best of both worlds for the price of one ticket, and you see all these little snippets from shows. It's so entertaining.
It is fun. It is fun, as you know, I work with our mutual friend Jim Regato as the backstage mics on the show every year. But twice I've performed with shows I was in that were nominated, and it might be the most terrified I've ever been because it just feels so charged. It's not like just doing another show. These are 900 of your peers.
I know. I know. Brian had asked me to do a 30-second piece from Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and I was petrified. I mean, I'm backstage, I'm sweating. Right. And you're right. These are your peers.
Yeah.
And you're just going to go out and put yourself out there. And you know, there's no way they're not thinking in their head. They're not evaluating this, right? Because that's what they do.
But it is also probably the most supportive audience you'll ever be in front of, too.
Oh, I love them. Yeah. I love them. And you're right. You're glad-handing all night long and talking to people.
It's fun. Yeah.
And then there's food. There's parties afterwards. How does that get accommodated?
Well, we have, lots of rental spaces at the theater. So we're able to open up our Kimball House, which is the Victorian mansion, which is attached to the theater. That's where our offices are.
Oh, I didn't know you had. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's where our offices are, but we also have rental space there. So that becomes part of the party. The whole lobby space becomes part of the party. It's just one big traveling
It's great for local businesses.
It really is. The
Restaurants,
restaurants,
hotels, all of that become really great. So let's talk about Katie.
Okay.
Unless you had something more you needed to plug in.
Thank you for letting me plug the Capitol Center so much.
Oh my
That's
God.
great.
Well, it's such an institution. We need to get into it. More people need to know about it. And if I have another question later, I'm not sure I did, but if I do, I'll pop it up. So how's your career going? And how did you get into theater? What are you doing lately?
I feel like I need to air quotes career.
Well,
I don't know. Acting career. It's fine. I finished. I don't do a lot because I work for a theater. Sometimes it's hard. But this past fall, I was very fortunate to be in Death of a Salesman with Milford Area Players.
Loved it.
Thank you. That was a real bucket list role and a great experience. Yeah.
That's one of those shows I went in, and unfortunately, there wasn't enough audience there. I was heartbroken over that.
It's tough. I think, some of those older classics they're tougher sells. They really are. But I'm about to do my first show at the Hatbox, which is exciting.
Which is?
In July, I'm doing a production of a show called Bakersfield Mist with my friend Peter Josephson. It's a 2-person show directed by Vicki Sandin, produced by the Community Players of Concord. And that will be, I think, the first 2 weekends in July.
Peter does a lot of work with Kapow.
With Kapow, who I've also worked with.
I have them coming in. Matt Cahoon's coming in a couple of weeks.
I've worked with Kapow. I've done 2 main stage shows and 2 readings with them. And I love it. I love working with them.
They're so unique.
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk to them.
Yeah.
So what is that show? I saw him in... Wasn't he in Red up at the Winter Pacific?
Yes.
What a great show!
Yeah. No,
Peter's
Peter's amazing. He's an incredibly talented and incredibly smart man. This is a show we actually did together as a reading for Kapow at the Courier in their series that they do there. I think we did it 3 years ago, and it's based on the true story of a woman in Bakersfield, California, who claimed to have found an undiscovered Jackson Pollock painting in a junk shop. And lives in a trailer, and life has treated her kind of hard. And Peter plays the expert from the Metropolitan Museum of Art who is sent to authenticate or not this painting, which she claims to have found. And it's a really wonderful script. I really have to thank Kapow for asking me to do it and introducing me to it. And I'm thrilled I get to do it again with Peter. So it's a real interesting study on who gets to decide what is art and who gets to say what has value and what doesn't in terms of art, in terms of people. So it's I hope people will come. I'm excited to be at the Hatbox for my first show.
I love the Hatbox. I had Andrew in here yesterday. Yeah. And we chatted for a long time. The Hatbox is just so intimate. I love it. There's they could use a few more dressing rooms or something, but the theater itself is wonderful.
It's a neat space.
You can reach out and touch everybody. You don't have to be loud.
Right.
You can be very intimate. So what else have you done? How did you get into theater?
Gosh. My father, who was 50 when I was born, so I had a really interesting upbringing of a father who was older than some of my friends' grandparents. My father grew up in New Haven when all of the Broadway shows tried out. did their tryouts in New Haven. So he sort of grew up second acting and sneaking in and watching these shows. And he just loved nothing more than American musical theater. That was his passion. And so he sang me to sleep every night, and he sang me to sleep with show tunes. So this was sort of the music of my childhood. And all my friends are, as I got into high school, I realized nobody else was doing this. It wasn't like now, my daughter's friends, they're just packs and packs of these kids obsessed with Broadway. And it just wasn't that way when I was growing up. It was very unusual to be into Broadway and musicals. And so they started taking me to theater when I was 7, 8. And we went 5 shows a summer to Maine State Music Theater on the Bowdoin College campus, which was about half an hour from where I grew up. And I made them sit in the front row for years because I had to be as close as possible to the stage. And then I just knew this was what I wanted to do. And when I was in 4th grade, the Children's Theater of Maine came to my school. I'll never forget this. And they did a performance, and I was just mesmerized. And then they gave us flyers and said, we have these camps. And I came home, and I was very shy as a kid. I was very, very shy, very clingy to my parents. And my parents used to beg me, like, please try something, do something. And I came home with this flyer, and I said, I want to do this. And my parents were so overjoyed that I wanted to leave the house and do something and talk to other kids. And that just sort of started it. And I was not a theater major in college. I was actually an English major because at the time my college didn't have a theater major. But I took enough. I lived in the theater department. That was my home. And so it just, I've always done it. It's never been my career. Mm-hmm. I've gotten paid to be an actor. I've done summer stock. I've done shows where I've gotten paid. But I think I just always knew I wasn't probably cut out to try to make it my living. But I'm very fortunate. I've been able to make it my passion. I did a lot of work in New Hampshire. I moved to New Hampshire in 1990, and I did a lot of work with Stage One, with George Peele, and everything I know about comic timing I learned from George Peele.
Yeah,
absolutely everything I know. He's just a masterclass in comic timing. And I did his shows at the Palace. He used to do big musicals at the Palace in the summer. And I worked with Music and Drama Company in Londonderry, which is not around anymore, for about a decade. And then I had a baby. And so then I didn't do anything for a long time.
I know that.
And then my daughter came home from school, and I always said that I wanted my daughter to just enjoy going to theater. That was my only hope. And she came out of the womb performing, and it was just in her blood. And so she came home from school in 1st grade with a flyer from the acting loft and said, I want to do this, just like I had all those years ago. So as she started performing with the acting loft, which is also unfortunately not around anymore, we got to a point where I was able to go back and do some shows with them because we could be in the same place. And she was doing her youth shows, and I was doing my main stage shows, or sometimes she was doing the main stage shows, but we could sort of be part of the same company. And that was really wonderful. That was about 11 years ago that I sort of dipped my toe back into it.
So you sing and dance then?
I wouldn't go that far. I don't sing. I've always been an actor who can sing. I would never call myself a singer. I can get by. But I really now focus mostly on non-musicals. That's where my heart kind of lies. Until somebody does Gypsy. I'm still waiting before I age out of playing Mama Rose.
You're going to find someone.
Until I age out of playing Mama Rose, I'm waiting for somebody to do Gypsy.
So my next question was going to be, what's on your bucket list to do? So apparently
for sure that.
How about for a drama or just a comedy that's not a musical?
Yeah. Gosh,
I don't. Shows that you...
Yeah.
I have shows that I can't do anymore. They're on my list.
Right. Me too. I know. March of time. It's killing me.
Unless they can do a hologram.
Right. I crossed the biggest one off my bucket list in 2013 when I did Wit with Milford Area Players.
Oh, no kidding.
And that's the show that won me my theater award.
Nice.
And
congratulations.
Thank you. It was probably the best creative experience I've ever had. I loved the character more than anything. Did
you do a lot of research for it, or was it just innate?
But it was when I met Vicki Sandin, who is my director and who's now directed me 3 times, and she'll be directing me in Bakersfield for the 4th time. And it was just this perfect sort of moment of both of us feeling the same way about this character, about the importance of her story. And we would rehearse, and then everybody else would go home, and Vicki and I would stay, and we would just talk and talk and talk. And my character Vivian had 9 monologues, and so we'd work those monologues, and it was just a really kind of magical process and a great company to work with.
Can you give an overview for anybody who doesn't know
the story? Sure, it's a fascinating play. It won the Pulitzer Prize. Margaret Edson wrote one play, won the Pulitzer, and has never written anything else. And she's a kindergarten teacher who's had this play in her. It's about a woman who's a professor of 17th century poetry, specializes in John Donne. She's very intellectual. She attacks everything from a purely intellectual standpoint, and she has advanced aggressive ovarian cancer. And it's her journey. She tells you at the start of the play that she dies at the end. So it's her journey through that experience and letting her guards down to allow herself to be helped, to become vulnerable, to go from this intensely intellectual person to someone listening to somebody read her a children's story. You know, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece.
Not many people do it.
No.
I don't think I've...
It's kind of, I mean, I think people shy away from it because it seems very depressing, but there's some real beauty in it.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be.
So that was probably the biggest role on my bucket list, but remaining, I'm dying to do Doubt. I would love to play Sister Aloysius in Doubt. That's probably up there.
Yeah, that's a great play. I think the community
the players did it a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so now you have to wait.
I know. Someone else could do it.
Yeah.
It's a good show for the Hatbox if anyone's listening and wants to pitch that to Andrew.
Yeah. Did you go to pitch night the other night?
I didn't. No.
I didn't either. I was out of town. It'd be interesting to see. Boy, they get some crazy stuff through that theater down there. So how about personally? How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm an empty nester, sort of. I have a kid in college, I know.
Did you cry?
Well, this is her second year, so not as much. The first year a little bit. I miss her, obviously, but she's doing great things. So she's a theater major.
Wonderful.
Holy Cross, my alma mater. She's very academic too, so she's this really kind of interesting blend of academics and performance. She's a neat kid. I can't say kid anymore. She's almost 20. But yeah, so my wife and I, we're
have I met
just
your
doing
wife?
a thing. You might have. I think she was with me when we saw Warmth of the Cold. So I don't know if you met her that night.
You might have been overshadowing the power of media.
That's very funny.
It may have eclipsed.
That's
whatever.
very funny.
Have you ever wanted to direct or be on the other side?
Yeah, I took directing in college because I of had to.
Uh-huh.
I think but I really like working with actors. I have really very minimal tech skills. So I don't know enough about the tech side of it to know how, lighting is fascinating to me. If you've ever met my favorite lighting guy, Tyler Susie, who's all of 22, I think, it's fascinating to me what lighting designers do and sound designers. And I don't know enough about that. And I've always felt like that's where I would fall down as a director. But I've always said if I had my life to live over again, I would go into theater education and I would teach teenagers. So I love teenagers.
Oh, so you mean as like a camp or just
no, I'd want to be like Clint Close. I love
He's
teenagers.
The gold standard.
He really is. And Clint or Keith or Wyrick or any of the really amazing Chris Courage from the old acting loft. I really get a kick out of teenagers. I think they get a bad rap. I think theater teens especially are really interesting kids. And if I ever were to direct, I think that's who I'd want to direct.
That's interesting. Yeah. Clint had asked me if I would come in and talk.
Sure.
And I think you might have been there just before, right?
I did, yeah. I did talk to his classes.
It was so refreshing. They're just so energetic. Yeah. They're wide open. Their questions are just raw.
Right.
And they really want to know, especially in his classes, because they're it's not like they have to take it.
Right. They want to be there.
Yeah. And they are really vested in what's going on.
Yep.
And they just keep trying to pull things out of you, Yeah. It was a great time.
I had a great time. Yeah, we went in with Sheree Owens, who works with me at the Capitol Center.
Oh,
and who does
I don't think she knows me, but
everybody knows Sheree. She's amazing. But she works with me. She's in my department at the
I didn't
Capitol
know that.
Center. Yeah. And so we went in together and talked sort of about our careers and our journey, and it was great. I've also a few times worked with friends of my daughters who were working on their college auditions and working on their monologues. And I've met with them and sort of worked their monologues with them a little bit. And I loved doing that. I just think it's neat. So yeah, if anyone wants to hire me to teach a monologue class to their kids, let me know.
Oh, by the way, I'm glad you brought that part up so we can go back for a minute to the CCA.
Sure.
If anybody wants to get in touch with you,
sure.
How would they do that?
So I'm very easily reachable at the CCA. All of their staff information's on our website, which is ccanh.com. But I'm at kcollins@ccanh.com is the best way to reach me. I'm always on my email, even when I'm not in the office. But if people definitely want to follow along for updates on the new theater, we actually have the Bank of New Hampshire stage now has its own social media imprint. So it has its own Facebook page, its own Instagram page, and its own Twitter feed, along with the Capitol Centers.
They have a target date for that?
June 20th, our first show.
Of this year?
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was work going on down there.
I know. It's going to be really wonderful.
Can you tell us what it's going to be?
No, next week. Next week, we're making a big announcement of our lineup. So.
I'm giving you an open mic, a chance to...
You'll have to have Cherie come back next week, and she can tell you everything.
Man, that's terrible. Oh, I did want to ask you, and again, this you may not know the answer to this because it might not be your purview. Talent. Are you folks up against like Meadowbrook as far as bringing people in? Do you have a...
Yeah.
Is that tough?
Yeah, it is.
I don't know who else there is competition
Hampton
with,
Beach, the casino. Tupelo, certainly. Yeah, primarily because they are bigger venues and they make most of their money on the bar, on food and drink. That's where most of the money gets made. That's where if you go to New York or Boston, how many bars do you have to walk past to get to your seat? Yeah. That's where the money gets made.
Good point.
And so because of that, they can pay a higher artist fee. They can keep their ticket prices lower because they know their money is getting made, elsewhere. So we do definitely compete for acts with those.
So they're like the Walmart, right?
They're good. I mean, they're all good outfits. We're all friendly with them, and a lot of our crew work up in Meadowbrook too, and they're all really good people.
Is there ever a conflict where you think you're going to book an act and
sometimes
someone knocks on your door and says, you're not getting them?
Sometimes they'll go to another theater. I mean, most theaters will have, most contracts have a 60-mile exclusivity clause, so you can't book another show within 60 miles.
Funny you would bring that up. Have you been watching that controversy with To Kill a Mockingbird?
Yes.
Is that insane?
It's crazy.
That's
crazy.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
I want to have Michael Curtis in a couple of weeks. He's coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pick his brain.
Is that going to be the extended show? The 2-hour show?
Yeah. That's the marathon.
Right.
That'll be the fundraising.
Michael doesn't say things quickly. I don't know if you've...
That'll be the Labor Day telethon.
Right.
What's your spouse's name?
Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't know.
Did we clean the slate?
Yeah, I think we did. What are you up to?
So I'll be doing 4 shows between June, and I've never been so busy.
You're in demand.
Isn't that crazy? I've never been so busy. Between June and probably January, I have at least 4 shows. So I'll be doing one up at Jean's, Titanic. Mm-hmm. I'll be up at the Winnie doing Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And then again in the fall, I'll be up at the Winnie doing Long Day's Journey into Night.
Oh, what a good one. Yeah. That's got to be a bucket list role.
Yeah, I'm kind of running out of those. Actually, that's why I took it.
Yeah. I keep waiting for the all-female Glengarry Glen Ross. That's my other, Rosetta Stone.
Okay, so first of all, Glengarry's not done enough, in my opinion.
Right.
And I would love to see a female version. Who would have the guts to do it?
I think it'd be great. And so timely.
Oh, my God.
It's so timely for this economy.
Put that on at the Hat Box?
Yeah.
Oh.
I remember, I forget who it was, but somebody said to me, you couldn't do it with women. They don't swear that much. I said, you haven't hung out with any women, have you? Yeah.
Okay, that's got to be on your bucket list. Why don't you direct that? You should.
Oh, sure. Okay.
It would be perfect. It'd be perfect. That's a great show. Yeah, and then Matt and I are doing something in January. We're doing Proof. I think we're doing
McGonagall?
Proof. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I like Matt.
I played opposite him in 9 to 5.
Oh, yes, that's right.
He was the object of my lust and crush as the office snitch in 9 to 5.
That was great. Actually, I loved your role. The problem I had with the play was I couldn't hear half the stuff.
Yeah, the Audi has some sound
Don't
issues.
they, huh?
Yeah.
Even after they've renovated.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
That was a fun part. Matt and I had a really good time.
Yeah, he looked like he was.
Any part where they say you can't be too big.
Yeah.
That's that never happens.
Or if they say we're going to strap you in a harness.
Yeah.
Okay. There can't be too many more times to get that done. Right. So thank you for coming by.
Thank you. This was great. It was
a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to check back for my future podcasts, where just some of my guests will be Jim Rigondo, Michael Curtis, Brian Halpern, and Matt Cahoon.